Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we explore the profound power of love, courage, and resilience in the face of adversity. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey of a brave young girl, her fight for safety, and the father who never gave up on her. Get ready for a tale that will touch your heart and remind us all of the incredible strength found in family bonds. The crisp morning air carried a sense of anticipation and unease as Lisa and her 12-year-old daughter, Emily, arrived at the courthouse. Lisa, dressed in designer clothes and clutching an expensive handbag, exuded confidence as she walked briskly up the courthouse steps. Her heels clicked sharply against the stone, each step a declaration of her defiance. Beside her, Emily trailed silently, her slight frame nearly swallowed by her oversized coat. Her pale face, framed by the wig she wore to cover her baldness from chemotherapy, betrayed her anxiety. For Emily, the courthouse was not just a building, it was a place that loomed over her life like a shadow. 3 years ago, her mother had walked through these same doors, emerging victorious after convincing the court to strip her father, Michael, of his parental rights. Back then, Emily hadn't understood what was happening, only that her world had changed overnight. Her father, who used to make her laugh with silly jokes and bedtime stories, was suddenly gone. Now, she was here again, caught in the midst of a legal battle she didn't fully comprehend. As they entered the courthouse, Lisa's lawyer, James, approached with a practiced air of calm. "Good morning, Lisa," he greeted her, then turned to Emily with a polite nod. "Emily." Lisa barely acknowledged the greeting. "Let's get this over with," she muttered, brushing past him. James lowered his voice as he walked beside her. "Remember, we're maintaining that Emily's condition is solely due to her leukemia and not any neglect. Stick to the strategy, Lisa." Lisa waved him off impatiently. "I know what to say, James. Stop nagging." Emily, meanwhile, felt invisible, as she often did when adults spoke over her. Her mother's sharp words and dismissive tone were familiar, but they still stung. She clutched the straps of her backpack tightly, her stomach churning with nervousness. As they waited in line for the security check, Lisa grew impatient. The line was long, and every delay seemed to aggravate her further. When it was finally their turn, a security officer asked to check Lisa's handbag. She rolled her eyes but complied, her annoyance evident. The officer retrieved a small flask from the bag and frowned. "I'm sorry, but you can't bring this inside," he said firmly. Lisa's face flushed with embarrassment. "I must have forgotten it was in there," she said quickly. But James's expression hardened. Once they were through security, he pulled her aside. "What were you thinking bringing that here?" he whispered urgently. "It was a mistake." Lisa snapped. "Drop it." James sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "This isn't about you, Lisa. This is about Emily. And we need to focus." Lisa brushed past him, leaving James exasperated. Emily followed her mother silently, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She scanned the bustling hallway, her eyes darting nervously. Then, she saw him, across the hall, standing with his lawyer. Was her father, Michael. He looked different, his hair was neatly combed, and his suit was impeccably tailored, but his kind eyes were the same. For a moment, their gazes met, and the noise of the courthouse seemed to fade away. Emily's heart leapt as a smile spread across her face. She raised her hand in a small wave, and Michael's expression softened. He waved back, his smile warm and reassuring. It had been so long since Emily had seen her father. But in that brief moment, she felt a flicker of the happiness she used to know. She glanced at her mother, who was deep in conversation with James, and made a quick decision. Quietly, she slipped away from Lisa's side and began weaving through the crowd toward her father. Michael noticed her approach, and his smile widened. When she reached him, he knelt down, opening his arms. Emily hesitated only for a second before rushing into his embrace. "I miss you, Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I've missed you too, sweetheart," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. He held her tightly, as though afraid she might disappear. For a few precious moments, Emily felt safe. The courthouse, the arguments, and her mother's harsh words seemed to fade into the background. She clung to her father, savoring the warmth and love she had yearned for over the past 3 years. "How are you feeling, love?" Michael asked gently. "Any news about your treatment?" Emily hesitated, unsure how much to share. "The chemo is hard," she admitted. "I get sick a lot. I've missed a lot of school." Michael frowned. Concern etched into his face. "And your medicine? Are you taking it regularly?" Emily shifted uncomfortably. "Mom sometimes forgets," she said quietly. "The cabinet is locked, so I can't always get to it." Michael's expression darkened, but he kept his voice calm. "That's not right, Emily. I'm so sorry you've had to deal with this." Before Emily could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Emily!" She flinched and turned to see Lisa storming toward them, her face a mask of fury. Grabbing Emily's arm, Lisa pulled her away from Michael. "Stay away from her," she hissed at him. "Lisa! This isn't about us," Michael said evenly. "It's about Emily's well-being." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "You lost your rights, Michael. You don't get to pretend to care now." Emily stood frozen between them, her heart pounding. She wanted to speak up, to defend her father, but fear held her back. As Lisa dragged her away, Emily glanced over her shoulder. Michael stood there, watching her leave, his expression a mix of heartbreak and determination. In that moment, Emily realized she wasn't alone. Her father still cared. And maybe, just maybe, things could change. The air inside the courtroom was thick with tension as both sides prepared for battle. Lisa sat beside her lawyer, James, her posture rigid and her chin held high. Her outward confidence masked the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. Across the room, Michael sat with his lawyer, Rebecca, his expression calm but resolute. Emily, small and vulnerable, was seated between Lisa and her court-appointed advocate, Maria. She kept her eyes on the polished floor, avoiding the gazes of everyone around her. The judge entered, his commanding presence silencing the murmurs in the room. "This court is now in session," he announced. "We are here to determine what is in the best interest of Emily Carter. Let's begin." Rebecca stood first, delivering an opening statement that was both calm and persuasive. She outlined evidence of Lisa's neglect, misuse of child support funds, and the impact these actions had on Emily's health and well-being. "This case," Rebecca concluded, "is not just about custody. It's about ensuring Emily's safety and giving her the chance to heal and thrive." James countered with a defense of Lisa's actions, attributing any shortcomings to the challenges of single parenthood and the stress of managing a child's illness. He emphasized that Lisa had been Emily's primary caregiver and accused Michael of using his financial resources to paint an unfair picture. Lisa nodded emphatically. her eyes darting toward the judge to gauge his reaction. The first witness called was a forensic accountant, who presented a detailed report on the misuse of child support funds. Charts and spreadsheets displayed on a screen showed thousands of dollars spent on luxury items, vacations, and alcohol. Lisa's face flushed as the accountant explained how medical bills for Emily's treatments were often paid late or not at all, despite ample funds being provided by Michael. Next, Maria, Emily's court-appointed advocate, took the stand. Her voice was gentle but firm as she shared her findings from interviews with Emily. Emily has described being left alone for long periods and experiencing fear during her mother's frequent mood swings. Maria explained. She also reported inconsistent access to her medication and a lack of proper care after her chemotherapy sessions. Lisa's composure began to crack. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her jaw tightening with each damning revelation. When the private investigator took the stand, presenting photos of Lisa frequenting bars during Emily's medical appointments, her confidence further eroded. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the investigator showed video footage of Emily being left alone for hours at home, her small figure visible through the security camera footage. The most dramatic moment came when Rebecca called Emily to the stand. The room fell silent as the young girl walked hesitantly to the witness chair. Maria offered her a reassuring smile, but Emily's hands trembled as she was sworn in. Emily, Rebecca began gently. This is your chance to tell us about your life at home. Please speak honestly. You're in a safe place. Emily's voice was barely a whisper at first. Mom, she gets angry sometimes. She drinks a lot. When she's mad, she hits me. Sometimes with her hand. Sometimes with other things. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Lisa shot to her feet, her face red with fury. She's lying. Lisa shouted. This is all a setup. Miss Blake. Sit down, the judge commanded, his gavel striking sharply. You will not interrupt this testimony. Lisa sank back into her chair, her hands clenched into fists. Emily continued, her voice growing steadier. She locks the medicine cabinet, so I can't always get to my pills when I need them. Sometimes, after chemo, my wounds don't get cleaned, and they get worse. She says the wig is the only thing that makes me not embarrassing to be seen with. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she spoke, but she kept going, drawing strength from the encouraging nods of her father and Maria. During the break today, she hit me in the restroom. She told me if I said anything in court, I'd never see either of them again. But I don't want to live with her anymore. I want to live with my dad. The courtroom erupted into murmurs again. Rebecca's voice cut through the noise. Your Honor, I would like to present medical documentation that corroborates Emily's testimony. The judge nodded, and Rebecca displayed images of untreated wounds, medical records showing missed appointments, and notes from Emily's school nurse about unexplained bruises. As the evidence mounted, Lisa's composure unraveled further. Her lawyer whispered urgently to her, but Lisa appeared too stunned to respond. When the judge asked if Emily had anything else to add, she hesitated for a moment before locking eyes with her father. My dad never hurt me, she said, her voice clear despite the tears. He always made time for me, even when he was busy. I want to be with him. Michael's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he mouthed, I love you, to his daughter. Emily managed a faint smile, her courage inspiring everyone in the room. The judge called for a recess, giving everyone a moment to process what they had just heard. As the room emptied, Lisa's anger boiled over. This is all lies. He's poisoned her against me, she shouted. But her words were drowned out by the collective disbelief of those around her. In the hallway, Michael approached Emily cautiously, mindful of the tension. "You were so brave in there," he said softly, kneeling to her level. Emily leaned into his embrace, her voice trembling. "I just want it to be over. Dad. I just want to go home. Soon. Sweetheart." Michael promised, his voice thick with emotion. "Soon. You'll be safe." As they returned to the courtroom for the judge's decision, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. The courage of a young girl had shifted the tide. But the final verdict was yet to come. The courtroom was silent as Judge Harold Weston returned to his seat. His stern gaze swept across the room, lingering briefly on Emily, whose small frame seemed even more fragile in the oversized chair. He adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat, his expression solemn but resolute. Everyone held their breath, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on their shoulders. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, Judge Weston began. "This court has reached a decision regarding the custody of Emily Carter. I must commend the bravery of this young girl, who has endured far more than any child should. Her courage in sharing her truth has guided this court toward what I believe is a just and necessary outcome." Emily's heart raced. She gripped the edge of her seat, her eyes darting between her father and the judge. Lisa, seated a few feet away, shifted uncomfortably, her hands clenched into tight fists. Michael, on the other hand, sat still, his gaze fixed on the judge, his expression a mixture of hope and anxiety. Judge Weston continued, his voice firm and unwavering. The evidence of neglect, financial misuse, and emotional and physical harm inflicted upon Emily by her mother, Lisa Carter, is both compelling and deeply troubling. Furthermore, the testimony provided by Emily and corroborated by medical and investigative reports has made it abundantly clear that her current living environment is not only unsuitable but also dangerous. Lisa opened her mouth to protest, but a sharp glance from her lawyer silenced her. She slumped in her chair, her defiance giving way to a look of defeat. Therefore, Judge Weston said, his tone final, effective immediately, full custody of Emily Carter is awarded to her father, Michael Carter. Furthermore, Lisa Carter is ordered to undergo a comprehensive psychological evaluation and enroll in an alcohol rehabilitation program, until such programs are successfully completed and reviewed by this court. Her visitation rights will be restricted to supervised visits only. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Emily's wide eyes filled with tears as she turned to her father. Michael, overcome with emotion, reached out his hand to her, and she ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. They clung to each other, their tears flowing freely, oblivious to the murmurs and movements around them. You're safe now, sweetheart, Michael whispered, his voice choked with relief. I promise you, you'll never have to go through that again. Lisa, however, could no longer contain her anger. She shot to her feet, her voice shrill with fury. This is unfair. She's my daughter. You can't take her from me. Judge Weston banged his gavel. Ms. Carter, if you cannot maintain your composure, you will be removed from this courtroom. Lisa glared at the judge, her face flushed with rage. But she sank back into her chair. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she seemed beyond reason. Her gaze shifted to Emily, who was now clinging to Michael, her face buried in his shoulder. For a brief moment, Lisa's expression softened, a flicker of regret passing over her features. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by cold resentment. As court officers escorted Lisa out of the room, Emily tightened her hold on her father. She's gone now, Michael murmured, stroking her back gently. You don't have to be afraid anymore. The judge addressed Michael directly. Mr. Carter, I urge you to work closely with the appointed guardian to ensure a smooth transition for Emily, given her medical condition and the trauma she has endured. Her recovery will require time, patience, and support. Michael nodded, his voice steady despite the emotion swirling within him. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll do everything I can to give her the care and love she needs. As the courtroom emptied, Michael held Emily close, his hand never leaving her shoulder. They were approached by Rebecca, Michael's lawyer, who smiled warmly. You did it, she said softly, her gaze shifting to Emily. You were incredibly brave. Emily, you should be proud of yourself. Emily managed a small smile. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Rebecca handed Michael a folder filled with documents. Here's everything you'll need: custody agreements, medical records, and contact information for Emily's guardian. I'll be here if you need anything else. Michael nodded gratefully. I can't thank you enough. Rebecca, you've given us a second chance. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the city, as if welcoming Emily and Michael to their new beginning. Emily paused at the top of the steps, gazing out at the world that suddenly felt full of possibilities. Ready to go home, sweetheart? Michael asked, his voice gentle. Emily looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with tears, not of sadness, but of relief. Yes, Dad, she said softly. The drive to Michael's house was quiet but filled with a sense of peace. Emily stared out the window, her thoughts racing. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that she could finally breathe without fear. When they arrived, Michael knelt beside her before opening the door. This is your home now, he said, his voice filled with emotion. You're safe here, Emily. We'll take it one day at a time. Together. Emily hesitated, then threw her arms around him. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. Inside, the house was warm and welcoming. Emily's room had already been prepared, filled with soft blankets and books she loved. She spotted the swimming pool in the backyard and turned to Michael with a smile. Can we swim? She asked, her voice tinged with excitement. Michael laughed, a sound that felt like a release of years of tension. Of course we can, he said, as they splashed in the pool under the setting sun. Their laughter echoed across the yard, a sound of healing and hope. It was a simple moment, but one that marked the beginning of a brighter future. The road ahead would be challenging, but together, they were ready to face it. For Emily, this was more than a new chapter, it was a life reclaimed. A life filled with love, safety, and the promise of happiness. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey here on Empathy Stories. Emily and Michael's story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, love and courage can shine through. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to hear more inspiring tales of resilience and hope. Together, let's spread empathy and compassion to make the world a kinder place. See you next time.